I saw you out there in Miami.
Listen, I may or may not have been in Miami back in 2021 and 22.
Welcome to Empire State of Grind, a podcast about the people building the next wave of tech startups in and out of New York City. Please be advised that the hosts of this podcast are practicing lawyers or other professionals in the tech industry, and that some of the guest employers on this podcast may be clients of the hosts. The information and content provided during this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal or financial advice, or as the positions or stances of the employers of any of the individuals.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Empire State of Grind, the show where we learn about the people building the next wave of tech companies in and out of New York City. On today's episode, I am joined by my longtime friend, Alex McGee, co-founder, CRO, and head of government affairs at Balcony, a property management system for governments built on the blockchain. We are also joined by our co-host Kiran Bath, who is product counsel at Chainalysis, the leading blockchain analytics company. We will learn about the multiple current challenges Balcony is solving, the strategy Alex deploys in navigating governments as a customer, a traditionally difficult space, and why blockchain is the right technology to solve these problems. We will also discuss some general tips on selling and how to cultivate a winning culture. Let's do this.
Welcome to another episode of Empire State of Grind. I'm here today. We have Alex McGee of Balcony, our co-host Kiran Bath. Alex, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks for being here. So this is really cool because you and I have kind of a cool background, right? We've known each other for a while. Now you're a co-founder of really a booming technology company in the property tech space, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, you met me when I was 15, and now I have one kid, one on the way, and we have a technology company. So it's been a journey. But I'm having a great time doing it, so I love to talk about it.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I love when my worlds collide, right?
Yeah. We're finally right on the edge in the blockchain world, which I don't think we've gotten to on this show yet. So
100%.
Exactly. So why don't you tell us then what you're up to with Balcony, or what Balcony's up to?
Yeah, so Balcony Technology Group is a data intelligence company, and we're designed to help every level of government better understand and work with their land records. So for every level of government, that means something different. For the local level, you interact with it every quarter at least, or every year, paying your taxes, going in, talking to the person at the front desk. They have a really tough time using their technology. You know how bad of a process it is.
It is bad.
You talk to 10 people, 8 people have a bad experience working with local government, right? And that's because the technology that they use is really outdated. Legacy systems. So Balcony really assists the process of application to certificate, analytics, and really showing what they don't really know or understand. Now, what does that mean? A lot of governments have a siloed system, so something as simple as code enforcement kind of gets swept under technology. A lot of properties sell in certain high transactionary cities that don't really get inspected because the people don't know what's really selling. So a simple use case that we did when we first started in the town of Orange, New Jersey, is we built an API into their existing code enforcement system to get a foundational understanding of how many properties have like what's called a C of H, or like a CO, or like a move inspection, right? So an inspector comes, looks at the property, makes sure it's move-in ready. The problem is that they are relying on the voluntary, disclosure of sellers. So like good actors doing good things.
Right.
That's
a good point.
So you have to come in, fill an application, pay a fee, and be a good guy in the process. Is everybody a good guy?
No, it's true. I mean, I've flipped, over a dozen houses in my life, and you're definitely right that it's a little bit of on the merit system.
100%.
And you'll buy properties that have these outstanding issues that no one's taking care of, and then they want you to do it.
Yep.
And it's like, not my fault you lost track.
Exactly. And then even take it a step back, right? Like, government is designed to help you, but they're not like capitalist business institutions that can make money. And a lot of times they're underfunded and they have to cut people. But when you look at how people are taking advantage of the system, so in Orange's case, 2/3 of the properties that were selling in the city didn't file for a C of H. So think about it. Every application has anywhere from a $250 to $1,000 fee associated with that. And that's if you are right the first time. If you are a bad actor and you don't do it, you can get fined up to $2,000. So in 2024, they've had over 100 properties that don't have a C of H. So they're missing out on theoretically 6 figures of revenue by merging 2 systems.
And just for the audience who's not as real estate knowledgeable, C of H is certificate of habitability, right?
Correct.
And literally no one's supposed to live in the unit
until you have one.
Yeah.
Right. And most places have some sort of regulatory authority to protect tenants.
Yeah.
Right. And as a building owner or as like a person that interacts with government, you're supposed to have certain certificates when you have people living in your house or when you're selling your house to somebody else. But most things happen in the private market, so things don't really get to that person's desk because they don't have visibility, right? Government right now does not serve or does not really service observability over their data sets because they're looking through a microscope over mass amounts of data to really understand insights. Right. Or they have a queue system that's been working for the past like 20 years, and the person that's been doing it hasn't really changed how they work on their work product. Right. So you have people in government saving stuff to their, their private, systems, like their thumb drives, their email addresses. The indexing is all wrong. So you don't know where things are. How many times as a real estate developer or flipper have you went to a city hall and they lost your documents or they didn't have an application that you filed and you knew you filed it, but where really is it? So these people have a very thankless job. They work for, little to no money, and they're serving the people. So,
and their tools are terrible.
Yeah. So I have extreme empathy for tax collectors, tax assessors, code enforcement directors, county clerks, sheriffs. You guys have it rough, you know? So Balcony wants to be that ease of use or that easy to use interface where you can really interact with your data at a higher level and really be secure that what you're seeing is true. And that's the best part about the blockchain. I mean, like the blockchain is designed for data provenance, immutability, traceability, right? So what is real estate? What are real estate documents? They're all documents tied to a capital asset that you have to trace who did what where. Or like, did I actually file for that C of H? Did I file for that construction permit to do my bathroom?
Or even who actually owns this property.
Exactly.
It's a big exercise in law school anyway of
tracing ownership.
Are squatters, do they own
rights.
it over a certain amount of time versus, at least luckily my experience in real life, but it is an issue that is pervasive.
Yep.
So how did you guys find the problem?
Being a user of the technology. So my background is in real estate development. That's what makes Balcony a really great company for what we're doing, is because we are domain experts in the real estate world. So we started we as in 2 of my co-founders for Balcony started Prime City, which was a real estate development company. And we built buildings around the state of New Jersey. We had a construction company, a property management company, and we dealt with these applications on a daily basis.
I remember. I think I have a hoodie that says Prime Search.
I know. I mean, like that's what it was, and that's what really got us thinking. Like, okay, we do this every single day. We know the pain points. We know the technology. We know what they're using, and we know the people. Because the hardest part with any sort of like SaaS startup is your go-to-market. How are you actually going to sell your product? How are you actually going to get users to use your product? And then when you add that layer of government, which people already deem as very hard to access, without relationships, it's extremely hard to sell a beta test of your product to an unproven person.
I think the other difficulty that I've seen anyway is that, unlike other startups where you can go directly to a user and see if they want to try it out, there's like an extra layer of, government doesn't just let their people just try something.
Exactly.
So it does stop a lot of development in that world because the opportunity is hard.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give some people some trade secrets. I know some people are out there trying to start a business to government business, and they've gotten told no 30 times by VCs. That says a very long sales cycle. How you go around that is you have a bunch of public data at your fingertips. If you build a technology solution with publicly available data and you show how you're going to make them money or save them money or complete a process, that's your way in. These people are people too, right? And they all have a budget in mind. So you have to understand the levers that they want to hear. And a lot of times it's compliance and it's margins. If you stay true to those 2 levers, I believe you're going to have some success in the government sphere.
And when you're dealing with government folks, right? So we talked about them having very outdated systems, all the bureaucracy. So going from those kind of more scrappier tools to a pretty sophisticated tool that relies on the blockchain, how do they deal with that sophistication? Like, are they open to it? Is that like a kind of simplicity story that you have to build around it? Like, how does that work?
You sell blockchain or don't talking about blockchain. And you also have to really sell the user experience in the process more than what's under the hood. Like, most technology companies that have an AWS backend don't go around explaining how their AWS works. Yeah. And then if you're trying to sell the technology more than the product, you have a good capability, but you don't have a product.
For what Balcony's doing is like, the problem's very obvious. The information's all over the place.
No, it's all this truth question, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And Balcony's ethos is to create a single point of truth for real estate records. Because you have to know what you're actually getting yourself into. Or even if, as the owner, you want to be sure that your records are protected and your ownership is protected, property rights are protected. Stealing deeds is a thing. Stealing properties is a thing. Believe it or not, it happened to me. And this is, mind you, this is after we started Balcony, right?
Okay.
So
and when did you start Balcony?
2021.
Okay, so a very young company.
Yeah. So we're already thinking about this problem. We're already building a solution that is plugged into, city databases, and we're providing real value. So I feel so bad for this bad actor because he chose the wrong person to try to steal the property from. Makes no sense. At that point, I'm just like, who do I call? Like, there's no real estate cop. Like, who do you call? So I called the mayor, and I'm like, hey, this guy is trying to steal my building. Like, what do you do here? He's like, I'm not really sure. Let me get back to you. So, okay. I called the police, and they're like, well, we don't have any sort of like real estate fraud cops, but you can make a fraud report, like if you had like a personal fraud.
Right.
So then I realized there's no help out there, right? I call the title company, and all they can do is put a flag on that specific insurer's underwriter. It was very apparent to me that there's no real protection. There's no deed lock at the county. So you're kind of like all on your own.
Where does Balcony fit in now that would prevent that from happening?
So what we are doing, and this is news, we signed our biggest contract to date, which is the county of Bergen. Bergen County has 70 towns, 1 million people. What we're doing is we're implementing what's called the Notice of Settlement tool and notification tool. So instead of it being voluntary, at the point of sale for every transaction, we're going to notify each individual city and person associated with that property, because it gives them a better chance to figure out what's going on. And also the city has a better idea how to, really make sure the transaction's happening. Like the C of H is a big check. Did they file for, they close out all their permits? Did they have the proper certificates to actually sell the property?
Right, if the sale comes out of nowhere, it's a red flag.
Right. And this is all to notify people more, to build in some sort of a locking function at the county, right? So what we're trying to do is, the county is the arbiter of truth in the conveyance situation. Right. So if you have the county basically doing its best to prevent fraud, that's your best chance of stopping fraud or getting into the hands of the right people to actually help you.
I remember when you first told me about what you were doing, in my head going, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know too much about blockchain, or I believe at the time it was just the idea of using an NFT as a deed.
Yeah,
as a record of a deed, and I was like, that makes a ton of sense. Why am I in some janky website that looks like it was built in like the AOL days?
Yeah,
for me to pay my property tax, this seems not very protective.
I think with the blockchain industry, we are seeing a revolution of people putting blockchain in like real use cases, and we're seeing like the delivery vehicles of certain products that are just a blockchain backend. Like Chainalysis is one, right? Like, that company wouldn't have existed in 2005, 2010, but it exists today because of the use case. There's a lot of other blockchain-based companies that you don't really know use blockchain, like JP Morgan. JP Morgan operates the biggest private blockchain in the entire world, right? Most companies like Walmart use blockchain.
Even regionally, North America is the largest crypto blockchain market globally. I think it's like over 1.3 trillion.
Look, I think the community in the States is extremely amazing. I think the crypto community and the blockchain community, the Bitcoiners, we all have our different patina. We all have our different talking points. but at the same time, it's a great group of people. And I think they're very passionate. This past election is a big showing of how passionate like the Bitcoin, the crypto, and the blockchain community really is.
That's true.
I think that most people, I'm 33, right? Most people around my age own cryptocurrency. That's a fact, right? My daughter is going to grow up in a world where Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana are common as the euro, the yen, and the dollar, right? That's a totally new paradigm shift that no one has prepared us for.
That's true.
Because even when I first got into crypto, right, or blockchain, I should say, crypto and kind of financial assets was the first obvious kind of thought. But the real more compelling use cases were things like smart contracts and using that ledger to record property transactions.
For sure.
Yep.
But people were thinking, we don't know when that's even going to happen, or that people are going to become, alive to how useful that is. But these are the more real world, tangible examples that actually do make blockchain very relatable. Or like stable coin is probably going to become, more and more accepted. And we can imagine a day where we're now paying for coffee using stable coin, right? And merchant fees and intermediaries are not a thing. But you're right, it's happening faster than you think.
What I think is interesting is I totally agree. We'll probably have that in the next couple of years. That's what I think is cool is you guys are doing something not just with it, but that almost like it's obviously it's not specifically designed to help you, but it almost seems like it, right? Like it's perfect for keeping a record.
If you like transparency, it's for you, right? like I don't know how better to sell blockchain. I mean, it speaks for itself. We want to live in a world where I don't have to trust what I'm seeing. I know it's truthful because of consensus, or I know it's truthful because of provenance or traceability. I think we are all smarter as a species with research and understanding what's fake and what's not. We all have parents. How many times does your parent send you a video of like some fake AI stuff, and you're just like, this is not real? Like,
dude, I dress up as Santa Claus and trick all my little cousins every year.
I know,
so I get it.
Yeah, I mean, look, like Facebook has a lot of interesting things on it that's not always correct. So I think there's going to be some sort of way for us to prove truth in the future, because as AI gets better, as deepfakes get better, that truthfulness is going to matter. Where it matters a lot right now, most people's most prized asset is their home, right? The single family home is the primary way how Americans
most people's
create
biggest
wealth,
asset,
right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's interesting that the technology that supports or defines that is one of the oldest, older than me.
Yeah.
COBOL is a coding language that was built after the advent of computers in the 60s. That's still being used by most governments from legacy systems to secure data sets.
Crazy.
And what does COBOL mean, right? And disclaimer, I'm not the tech guy, but I've gotten...
Well, you sound like it.
Yeah, I've been in my fair share of meetings to understand what our technology does. So COBOL, when you look at the export of like what you actually get, it's a bunch of zeros and ones in weird places. Right, you have an Excel file that doesn't make any sense, and you're just like, how do I make sense of this data? So think about that, and then think about all the different technology companies that also have a scrambled COBOL data set that work in your state. So when you get all these inputs in, how do you really make sense of what's going on? So how Balcony works, we built these data ingestion pipelines to legacy systems. We then standardize that data in our database, and at the same time, we secure that on our layer one, right? We're on Avalanche. So Avalanche provides for private blockchain for government use. Public blockchains, in my opinion, don't meet muster for government security needs because you don't know who's validating your transactions. Versus if you had a private or a permission blockchain, you really know who your validators are, right? So that being said, everything is then secured on our blockchain. So then you have that data provenance traceability, and then at the same time, our Postgres database pings our front end, which has the screen of whatever module or asset registry they want to see. Why this matters is because if we're able to standardize different data sets over different providers, we can provide insights that don't really have right now, right? You smash two pieces of data together and you get some answers, right? I call it a story. You have to make your data tell a story for the benefit that what you're trying to get. And that's really what works for local government, because when you overlay that model on a lot of different systems, you provide that observability layer that they're really looking for. And it's also investigatory, right? Is that a word? Investigatory?
It is a word.
Okay, cool. So most towns don't know everything about their city. Something as simple as how many properties have sold in any given month. A lot of times they don't have like a clear answer because their technology doesn't allow them to search how you would think it would, right? So when you start to create these logic trees around municipal data, you come with a lot of interesting insights. And then when you have a good user experience, that's the ERP version of the product, right? Most governments want everything all in one. Application, certificate, compliance, analytics, everything in one spot. The issue is that the solutions that they're getting right now don't meet muster to the problems that they're facing. So a lot of people are having their own Excels or their own side, databases because their existing systems don't let them do what they want to do.
Right, they're building their own thing to solve the problem, and then that doesn't scale across different municipalities. And
exactly. I think all the government companies that service New Jersey outside of mergers were founded before I was born, and they're all still working in the same cities.
We're going to take a short break to hear from one of our sponsors, but when we come back, we'll learn about the unique challenges Balcony faces selling to governments, what that landscape looks like versus selling to commercial enterprises, and how Alex navigates this notoriously difficult market. We'll also discuss some tips for connecting with customers, especially with complex technology products.
This episode is brought to you by NextGen Law. NextGen Law supports today's modern tech companies, bringing expertise in drafting and negotiating customer contracts and scaling of go-to-market legal functions. For more information, visit nextgenlaw.com. That's NextGenLaw with hyphens in between each word.com.
you did touch on one thing, that you're not the tech guy. So I don't need to know who is the tech guy. I'm curious, like, how big is the company? How many people? And then I know you wear many hats. Why don't you tell us about those too?
That's a great question. So our founding story, there's 5 of us that founded. We're a very non-traditional founding
That's
company.
A lot of founders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but when you think of the problem that we're trying to solve, it really took 5 really
makes sense.
The brains to tackle
it. The real estate guy is not going to know the tech side.
Luckily, when we started the company, my co-founder, John Belitsky, was that technical mind to really get us going. So he created the architecture in concert with Dan Silverman. So Dan Silverman was the blockchain crypto guy I was telling you about. Dan's my best friend, right?
Yeah,
Mike's my best friend. Exactly. So between Dan and John, we really had what we needed to get going on the technology side. And mind you, when we first started, we were called Balcony DAO, right? So I started, I'm like kind of an OG in the crypto space. We started off as a company that was designed to create this community of people who wanted to invest in real estate, and we were going to raise money using Reg A, Reg CF, Reg D, securing that all with tokens, but having like real properties to represent your ownership, right? That was the initial idea. While we did that, we built a really great real estate tokenization engine that really had no customer, right? Because when you think about it,
that makes sense. Yeah,
like,
who cares about this?
Who cares about it other than the fact that you have this engine to do something, but how do you package that engine in a SaaS product to actually create a business around?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because that's when a lot of these DAOs were starting, and DeFi summer happened, and a lot of people made a lot of money and a lot of mistakes, right? That's just what...
I saw you out there in Miami.
Listen, I may or may not have been in Miami back in 2021 and 22, but that's why I see. It's funny you say that, because now I see everybody that I saw back then, but they're wearing a suit today. When I saw them back then, they didn't have they were all undoxed people. Crypto blockchain was a very Twitter undoxed world where you had a bunch of Telegram chats, and you got invited to Telegram chats and Telegram chats and Telegram chats to figure out your community. But that was our origin story, right? The crash happened. Terra Luna crashed. The crypto market was going crazy. SBF went to jail. Blockchain and crypto became this pariah talking to people, right? And that's when we really had the eureka idea, in the bottom of the bear market. It's that's when you build.
For sure. And the crypto winter is when you build.
Yeah, exactly. When everybody's running away, that's when you double down and you're like, okay, how do I figure this out? So the answer really came, I remember it clear as day. We went down to Dan's house in Florida. We had a big like all hands company, I wouldn't call it a retreat. It was just like a meeting like, hey, we got to like really figure this out because what we initially thought wasn't working. And then we had this idea of like really introducing blockchain to the governments in a digestible format that we called an asset registry. And we utilized our real estate relationships to get meetings with business administrators and mayors, not just to sell a product, but to learn, right?
Yeah.
You know, let me drive your system. Let me figure out your pain points. I figured out that iteration model through my research to Palantir. So Palantir is a big government technology company, for those who don't know, and they have a thing where they forward deploy their engineers on site, right? And why that's important is because until you really feel the technology on site and really feel people's pain, you don't really get how to architect a solution around it to really help them.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have to iterate quickly, right? Like if you want to iterate fast, it's like 2 weeks, a month of sprints to give the client what they want. And then when the client has that trust built up with you of, hey, they're actually receptive to what I'm talking about. And then internally, you have to walk the line of being a service company versus a product company. And that's extremely hard to do at the startup stage. Because you want sales and you want to work for everybody, but not everything is scalable, right? So you have to pick what technology that you're building on the back end applies to a lot of use cases on the front end to really expand.
Agreed. You can't build everything for everybody.
No,
is what you're saying. Yeah.
No, and then you have to be honest with yourself and your team on your current tech capabilities. You know, if you're trying to architect a solution that's 3 years out, and you have to not, how you have to get revenue to get make that 3 year point.
What you're talking about is called road mapping, right? So customers want to see a lot of times when they're buying a product from a newer company or growing startup is like, where is this going? Because they might be more willing to jump in early before they have the whole fully baked product they like if they see that you're on the road to this.
Correct. You have to be able to deliver capabilities during your roadmap because that's like the hack, right? To provide value building to X, along the way, we're going to hit these hurdles. And these hurdles are going to affect your business X, Y, Z, right? With the government, the hurdles are sometimes just people, right? Like it's a big people conglomerate.
Yeah.
So you have to basically weave your way through and then provide a win scenario for everybody. How I work and how I negotiate is you have to literally empathize so much with your counterpart to where you want to provide them a win, right? And then when you have that alignment, you're trying to get to that's right as opposed to yes, right? Because if it's a that's right, then you kind of know the use case.
Yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think for the audience, it's tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm saying it right, I guess, and I think you see a lot of people make this mistake early on is that you think that what you want is a sale and what you really want is alignment on a vision.
Yes.
Because the sale comes as part of that, but just selling something doesn't build that trust that is a longer term, more beneficial relationship.
Exactly. And, you know, as a startup in the government space, you're also fighting the headwinds of legacy competitors.
Yeah.
Right?
I was literally just going to bring up competitive pressure. I was like the other voice and sometimes the phantom voice in the room, and maybe you're submitting for tenders or maybe you're just pitching blind, but sometimes your customers or prospects will say, well, so-and-so can do this or so-and-so did that. And sometimes that's distracting, right? But sometimes it's strategic and useful. So I guess, I would love to hear your perspective around competitive pressure.
I love it personally because it lays the like in New Jersey, I'll just speak about New Jersey for a second. The competitive landscape of government technology is like 6 companies, right? So when you understand the capability of 6 companies, no matter if I know the room or not, I know you use one of the 6. And then I know what I'm offering you is either a bolt-on or a replacement specific to how your brain is going to like really receive it. So then it's not a question of, hey, I like this guy. It's like, why do I want to use you that is going to make me go back on my 20-year relationship with this person? Right. How can you provide value right now as opposed to I want to help out this new company, right? And when you look at it from a value perspective, you have to really compel the people to really believe by data. I can talk to you blue in the face, but if I show you how you're losing $200,000 with legacy systems, you probably want to take a look at it.
But this is an interesting question here for you guys, because like, who are the competitors? I'd imagine you're pretty early in the innovation you're working on. But
so it depends what kind of lens you want to view Balcony, right? If you view me as a government SaaS company, we have a lot of competitors. If you view me as a blockchain government SaaS company, there's limited competitors, right? If you view me as an investigations company, a lot of competitors, right?
Competitors working on this same problem?
In a Web 2 sense, yes.
Okay.
Right. So there's a lot of...
Gotcha. Like you could use it to solve this issue.
Right. And my personal beliefs is that emerging technology like blockchain and AI are the future of how government should work. But people can have different personal beliefs of what use case or what technology that they use.
For sure.
Back on I like where we're going with the whole sales conversation a little bit. So another thing that I picked up is you have to pay attention to the pronoun use of people that you're selling to in big organizations. If people use the words like I want to do this, or my thoughts are we hire you, they probably have no decision-making power. If they relate to words like we, or like I have to go back to the team, or if they try to paint someone else as the decision maker, they're probably the decision maker. Right?
Interesting.
Because you don't know who you're talking to sometimes. Like if you sell to a big enterprise or if you sell to government, sometimes the person you speak to may have a title but no real power to sign things.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I want to use your technology for sure. Like,
That's true in every business. Is like, who is the decision maker?
Right.
Yeah.
And in government, there's no like manual about like this guy signs contracts, because it's a real...
No, that's a good point.
Like power type of place. So just because you are the mayor or doesn't mean that you're really running
especially on like the technology side. Yeah, tech is interesting because a lot of times the department using it isn't, to your point, what power do they actually have in the organization to bring on new tools, and who else has to vet it?
Yeah. And then also on the product side, naming your user is really important. Creating a persona and calling it Julia or calling it Mark, and like, what does Mark want to do? Because it really puts you in the seat of that person, as opposed to what is the code enforcement board,
the county, Hudson County want to do.
Yeah. That is a big. They don't. When I say they, like elementary school, high school, college, they don't really teach you like the in between the lines of how to run a business, right?
No.
So you're learning on the fly, and you're basically learning by nose. And that's how we've learned a lot. Like we've done hundreds of meetings, VC meetings, client meetings, and got a lot of no's. But in those no's, you can either like take your ball and go home, or you can, put your big boy pants on and figure out what you did wrong.
Yeah, that's what makes an entrepreneur.
I was just going to add to the mix. Like, I also think you have to be highly adaptable. I mean, you talked about starting off as a DAO and finishing as a SaaS.
Yeah.
And then market changes and market cycles, different personas, different grit, different like teams to working. Like it takes a lot.
I mean, I've always wanted to be into compute. Like I call it, when I was younger, into computers, right? But not what you see on like just Yahoo and Google. I always wanted to be like that hacker guy that had all these like things going, and I never knew what I was doing, right? And even with Balcony starting out, I really got into technology more after working with engineers trying to build the product, because the more I understood how our technology stack worked, the better I can sell.
100%.
And then I was like, Lester, can you teach me how to do SQL? Right? Like just something simple. So I get how the database works. So then when I know what I'm doing or what I'm ingesting, I know where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
So he pulled up dbeaver for me and gave me a whole lesson on how to, run these searches, right? So then as a non-technical person, that informs my sales process, because now I can ask better questions to like the IT professional in whatever town to get what I need to get in the database.
I also think it talks to what you were speaking before about like this getting to a that's right versus a yes. Is what I found in business in general is it's about showing someone else we speak the same language, especially when you're negotiating, right? Like if I can get you to understand that I'm good at what I do by the questions I ask or whatever, that at least I'm knowledgeable, I can't just tell you I'm knowledgeable and have you believe me.
Yeah.
So I need to show it, and I've found the best way to do it is by the questions you're asking about their problems.
Yeah, 100%.
You see the problem the way they see it. And you have like a very product-focused role, right? So
Yeah.
who do you work with to get the answers on the tech side?
A bit of everyone, actually. I mean, certainly, so we have a big engineering team. We have a big product and development team. We have a huge security team. We also, because we also sell an investigation product and a compliance product, we have a lot of people on the government side who are actually ex-investigators from the government. So we have a lot of like experts. But it takes, because it's quite a complex product in that way, and the point is that it's simple in terms of just getting blockchain data analytics.
Right, how it actually
Putting that
works.
whole, like all that entire product life cycle together is a huge, huge feat. And sometimes I feel pretty privileged in that we get like a real pilot seat of seeing across the horizon all of these kind of different stakeholders and working cross-functionally. But I said that I really do love generally working with engineers and product people and design people because they really think quite differently to how I do.
100%.
Right. And that's fun and challenging, and it kind of, they just think laterally in a way that I now understand what lateral thinking means.
We're taking a short break, and when we come back, we'll learn about Alex's role as Balcony's head of government affairs. We'll also discuss the nature-nurture debate in the context of cultivating a winning attitude. And of course, we're going to talk a little New York talk. So in the spirit of this podcast, as we like to champion the efforts of our peers and colleagues, I wanted to tell the audience that our co-host Kiran Bath is also a newly published poet. Kiran's debut poetry collection, Instructions for Bano, travels through the timelines and geographies of the women in her family to understand the inherited consequences of becoming a South Asian bride. The collection beautifully addresses how to be part of a family and also one's own person. We couldn't be more proud. More information and a link to purchase your own copy can be found in the show notes of this episode. One of your other roles at Balcony is head of government affairs, right?
Correct.
So I see you are in like DC and other, right?
I get around a little bit.
So can you just talk a little bit about what you do in that role?
It's something I love to do. So I was a poli-sci major in college, and I went to international relations nerd camp as a kid, right, at Georgetown. So I was one of those kids that was always fascinated by, current affairs and politics and government. And then fast forward to today. So at Balcony, we are selling into government. So with that, comes with a pretty big policy requirement with how to get your message out there, right? So you educate lawmakers on your use case and why it's important. And you do the education either on the Hill in DC, within agencies, or in individual states, for state senators, state representatives for certain processes. So over the past year, we've been going to advocate for blockchain solutions related to the tracking of foreign investment of agricultural land and foreign investment of land next to military bases. We actually got report language passed last year in the House of Representatives from our outreach, right? So, we retained a really good lobbying company called Holland & Knight. My lobbyist, Scott Mason, he's a great guy. Scott is like my bigger brother with DC and really taught me how the game goes down there and really helped me understand the levers of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Most people don't get that everything is public down there. You can walk in any building and ask for any meeting that you want without any sort of meeting. So tomorrow I can go to the Senate office building.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
And wait outside Rick Scott's office until he comes, and I can be like, hey, I think you should give dog licenses in Florida, and I can leave. And
They're public servants, right?
Yeah, and that's totally okay. And most people don't get that, Most people don't understand your government works for you, right? So it's designed to help
that
you
way sometimes
because you don't know what questions to ask.
No, for sure.
And I'm learning the questions to ask too,
No,
right?
I think it's a cool aspect of what you're doing is you're both creating the need and servicing it, I guess, right? Is that saying it right?
Yeah. So government works, appropriations fund offices, which do a thing, right? So most times in the House of Representatives, you are lobbying for funding for a specific office for a thing that you want to do.
Okay.
Right. And that thing could be I want to open, betting in certain states. I want to do something related to clothes. I want a subsidy for airlines, whatever your thing is. So every company in America, or most companies, have lobbyists that talk to Congress about the thing that they want funded. And then they make the case in whatever issue of the day that person cares about. So for instance, with Balcony, we were initially trying to innovate the General Service Administration as well as the Department of Interior. So we looked at that as like America's landlord, right? The GSA owns every federal building. DOI owns the land below the surface. So that's like above and below. That's all of America. We've realized that that's just part of it. And most people don't really care how the GSA, indexes their real estate in Congress. They know it's a problem, but they don't really care as much as, national security issues.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, like the first couple of times down to DC, you talk about, I want to innovate the land system, I want to do this. They look at you, they smile, they say, that's really interesting. And then they go to the next meeting.
Right.
Sometimes you don't make it inside the office. They have it in the hallway because they know what you're trying to sell or trying to talk to. And then there was a case in Wyoming where there was an instance where CFIUS, which is an organization that looks at foreign investment inside of America, rescinded a real estate transaction that was owned in part by the CCP, which was next to a military base. First of its kind in the whole entire year. That sent these shockwaves through Congress about how China is like spying. We don't know if they're spying because real estate records are so hard to understand.
Right. We know this one instance, but what other ones might there be?
And they found that out through a tip, a literal email tip by Microsoft because they were the neighbor of the property. So our government